Powerful film drama in 1930s South Africa in 20 minutes on BBC One in The Power of One. Before that, the main evening news with Martin Lewis.
Defence chiefs from Britain, France and America meet here tomorrow to decide how to protect the remaining UN safe areas in Bosnia. There's growing concern about the fate of thousands of refugees who fled the first safe area to fall to the Serbs. Labour say Sir Richard Greenbury's leaked report into executive pay won't curb boardroom excesses. And why Linford Christie lost his British 100 metres title even though he won the race. Good evening. British, French and American chiefs of staff will meet in London tomorrow to consider the use of military force to defend the so-called safe areas in Bosnia. So far, UN protection has failed to stop Bosnian Serb forces driving tens of thousands of Muslim refugees from their homes. In Žepa, desperate civilians and Bosnian government soldiers tried to seize weapons from UN troops who fired in the air to stop them. But in Gorazde last night, 5 UN armoured vehicles were seized. The Bosnian Serbs have been stepping up pressure on government enclaves throughout eastern Bosnia. The UN says they could take the safe zone around Žepa at any time they choose. And the UN is concerned about the fate of some of the estimated 30,000 refugees from Srebrenica, which fell 4 days ago. Only about half of them have arrived in the government stronghold of Tuzla, and it's feared thousands may be at risk in Serb-held territory.
5 days after the Serbs expelled them from their homes, the refugees of Srebrenica are still coming in, but the numbers have dropped dramatically. For those on board coach 2074, it's the end of a long journey out of misery. We travelled with Ezita and her 2 young children, Habib and Manil. 3 years ago, the Serbs murdered Ezita's husband. Now they have taken her father and her brother. The only adults left are her and her elderly mother-in-law.
In Potocari, all the boys older than 12 were taken away from us. We saw the Serb soldiers hitting them over the head with rifle butts. The UNPROFOR soldiers just watched.
They were brought out to Tuzla airfield. With all her possessions in a single small bag, Ezita and her children arrived. After all that has happened to them, they no longer trust the UN, but they have no one else to turn to. Today, the UN revealed it was gathering evidence from these refugees for a war crimes investigation. It now appears that many of the refugees may be missing. The fear is that the Serbs may have taken them as they were trying to reach safety.
There is now considerable concern about what has happened not just to the men of Srebrenica, but to large numbers of women and children. There are supposed to be 30,000 people in the town, yet the exodus of a few days ago has suddenly dwindled to a trickle.
The UN has been told that at least 2 busloads of women and children have disappeared en route to here.
We understand that there are some buses on the way from Srebrenica to Kladine which are missing. There are people who we believe there are people who are unaccounted for, and we estimate the total number of the people who are unaccounted for to be as high as about 20,000.
Ezita and her children may have escaped the Serbs, but she's having to accept that many of her family may never make it. Tom Carver, BBC News, Tuzla.
The emergency meeting of military chiefs will consider a French plan for the defence of UN safe areas. Britain has already expressed strong doubts about its feasibility, but the United States is said to be willing to consider providing helicopter transport and air support for any new action.
The Bosnian quagmire continues to deepen on several fronts. This morning, this was the remains of part of a UN aid convoy. It had come under Bosnian Serb attack near Sarajevo. The normal UN response to this would be to fire a few shots back, but today French troops fired 69 heavy rounds.
We hope that it not only deterred or prevented any further attacks, but sends a very strong signal to the Bosnian Serbs that attacks against peacekeepers resupplying themselves and the city of Sarajevo won't be tolerated.
But the Western political response to the Bosnian Serb aggression hasn't been so robust. The French Defence Minister Charles Mignon, visiting his forces in Sarajevo today, again raised the prospect of military action to defend the safe havens. But while Britain steps up its aid effort, sending tents from RAF Manston in Kent this morning, it's again said French calls to send in combat forces won't work. The whole matter will be thrashed out at a meeting of American, French and British defence chiefs in London tomorrow. The British position was savaged by the Bosnian Foreign Minister in London today. He accused the government of deliberate delaying tactics.
What, in our opinion, London's engaged in right now is buying time for civilians to be slaughtered. It needs to be said that way. There is no other consequence of this buying of time.
One former defence secretary was also scathing about Britain's response.
The Prime Minister announced weeks ago that we were sending an air mobile force, but it's still in the United Kingdom. That shows gross incompetence on the part of the Ministry of Defence. Mr. Rifkin was Defence Secretary at the time, and if he can't defend our soldiers, he should resign.
Tonight, the Serbs release 54 Dutch peacekeepers. They were captured when Srebrenica fell on Tuesday. It's one of the few pieces of positive news to come out of Bosnia in a miserable week. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News.
And I'm joined now from Sarajevo by our correspondent, Jeremy Bowen. Jeremy, I gather that the Bosnian Serbs are stepping up their attacks on Jepa tonight.
Well, that's what it seems, though the situation is confused. Reports aren't coming out of there at the moment. What we've heard is that in the southwest corner of the Jepa enclave, there have been some infantry skirmishes, infantry attacks, in other words. The significance of that is the southwest corner of the enclave is where Jepa town itself is. Up to now, the Serbs hadn't moved forward on the ground with infantry. They'd simply been shelling the place. Now it seems they've got some men out of their trenches and moving.
And the UN peacekeepers in Jepa are coming under pressure from Bosnian government forces as well.
Yeah, that's right. For quite long periods today, more than 100 in one place and just under 100 in another observation post belonging to the Ukrainian peacekeepers. More than 100 of these soldiers surrounded that observation post. They were demanding the Ukrainians give them their arms and ammunition, some of their armoured vehicles as well. And we've also heard that one of the main roads leading to the Ukrainian compound in Jepa has been mined by Bosnian government soldiers, obviously with the intention of keeping the Ukrainians in there.
And in Gorazda, I gather that some UN vehicles were actually stolen by Bosnian government forces.
Last night, the Bosnian government forces attacked the Ukrainian compound in Gorazda. They hit a building with 4 grenades, set it on fire. They stole 3 or 4 armoured personnel carriers, again some heavy machine guns and some ammunition for that. There are also just over 300 British peacekeepers in Gorazda. The Bosnian soldiers weren't interested in their weapons because they're the wrong caliber, but they blockaded the British base to stop the British soldiers coming out to help the Ukrainians.
Jeremy, thanks very much indeed. Labour has attacked the recommendations of a leaked report on top people's pay for not going far enough. Sir Richard Greenbury's report, a copy of which has been obtained by the BBC, comes out against statutory pay controls, but in favour of new rules on share options.
Sir Richard Greenbury's report calls for 10 action points, key among them that top pay deals shouldn't be fixed by the very directors who benefit from them. It says some share packages, such as the £500,000 awarded to British Gas chairman Cedric Brown, are insensitive to shareholder opinion, and privatised utilities should comprehensively review such deals. But Labour says that's not enough.
And when people look round a year from now and say, have these abuses and excesses stopped, they will find that Greenbury has been unable to do anything about them. He's stopped short of the legislative and regulatory action that the government should have taken long ago.
Self-policing only works if everybody is involved in drawing up the rules. And that's what we've got to see over the next few months. Unless everybody can have a say in what the answers are, then there may have to be legislation.
Among the key recommendations of the committee set up by the CBI, a new code of best practice supervised by the Stock Exchange, a 6 to 12-month delay on share option deals for future privatisations, and the taxing of share options as income rather than capital gains. Tory MPs believe the package strikes the right note.
I think the code of practice, provided that's implemented firmly by the Stock Exchange, and above all, I think the sensible provisions on share options, that they have to be strictly linked to tough performance targets and shouldn't be sold immediately. I think all of it makes a lot of good common sense.
But news that 6 National Power directors cashed in share options worth £2 million last month, though properly reported to the stock exchange, will fuel demands for action. With Greenbury rejecting statutory controls as at best unnecessary and at worst harmful, the government's case for voluntary self-regulation should prove easier to defend when the report's published on Monday. But if, as opposition parties fear, the committee's remedies fail, then the question of excessive top pay deals could return to haunt the Conservatives in the run-up to the general election. Martin Dowell, BBC News, Westminster.
Muslim separatists holding 5 Western tourists in Kashmir have postponed till Monday their threat to execute them. They had said they'd kill the hostages today unless the Indian government released 20 Kashmiri prisoners from jail. Relatives of the 5, who include 2 Britons, have made a fresh appeal for their release. They asked the militants to treat the hostages as they would members of their own families. The Labour leader Tony Blair has arrived in Australia for a conference organised by the media tycoon Rupert Murdoch. In the past, Mr Murdoch's papers, which include The Sun and The Times, have been hostile to Labour, and Mr Blair has incurred backbench criticism for accepting the invitation.
The end of a 24-hour flight made at the invitation of Rupert Murdoch, a marked contrast to the position 9 years ago when Labour boycotted all Mr Murdoch's journalists, rather than travel to the other side of the world to meet the man himself. But first, Mr Blair had the chance to relax with senior Labour politicians from Australia, themselves the beneficiaries of unexpected support from Murdoch newspapers at their last election. But did Mr Blair accept that several Labour MPs back in Britain disapproved of his apparent overtures to Mr Murdoch?
Yeah, well, possibly, but I think that the important thing is to take the Labour Party's case to any quarter and to put the reasons why it is important for the Labour Party to gain respect and gain support.
Back at the airport, senior Rupert Murdoch employees were being met to be flown to the island, which has been hired exclusively for the private conference. The media will be the theme, but much of the media has been excluded. Mr Blair will be speaking at the conference on Monday morning. Tomorrow, Tony Blair is meeting the Australian Prime Minister Paul Keating before going on to the Murdoch conference, which remains the main purpose behind this visit. And Mr Blair is making it plain that he hopes the outcome of that will be a more sympathetic treatment towards Labour in the run-up to the next general election. Steve Richards, BBC News, Sydney.
Now, with news of a win for Lancashire at Lords and the rest of the sport, here's Rob Bonnet.
Yes, Lancashire have won their first trophy for 5 years by beating Kent in the Benson & Hedges Cup final today at Lords. Their 35-run victory was based on an innings of 93 from England captain Mike Atherton and 83 from John Crawley.
Mike Atherton is only a foot soldier with Lancashire, but his ability to lead by example still stands out. Today he was the cornerstone of an impressive batting display that exposed as folly Kent's decision to put Lancashire in. Fluent all round the wicket, he and successive partners kept up a run rate that ensured an imposing final total. Eventually he was dismissed just 7 short of what would have been a deserved century. But John Crawley, pushing his claims for an England recall, carried on with much authority and only ultimately perished in the final slog that took Lancashire to a total of 274 for 7. No county had ever got that many batting second in the Lords 55-over final, and Kent's chances of doing so diminished considerably with the early dismissal of both openers. That Lancashire had to fight at all was solely down to a magnificent innings from Aravinda de Silva. For a small man, he smites the ball prodigious distances, and his century, one of the competition's finest, kept Kentish hopes smouldering, as well as earning de Silva gold as man of the match. His dismissal, though, for 112 effectively ended Kent's challenge. Soon after, Lancashire were at last able to dispose of their unenviable reputation for underachievement. Kevin Geary, BBC News.
Linford Christie has lost his national 100 metres title at the 3A's Championships in Birmingham. He came 4th in his heat and failed to qualify for the final, but took part nevertheless as a guest and won. Christie's first domestic appearance this season was expected to result in his 8th British title. But as his heat developed, he eased from second place, which would have qualified him for the final, to fourth, which didn't.
Now Campbell going to take this, and Linford slowing down to the line, and he's being run down.
His failure was explained by BAF Executive Chairman Peter Radford as a serious miscalculation, accepted, he said, by Christie. But then came news of a tendon injury that Christie said he was trying to protect. Either way, a request by the world champion to run in the final as a non-competing guest after treatment was subsequently accepted. This, said the BAF, was a gesture to the crowd and to Christie, who duly beat Darren Braithwaite into second place by 0.15 of a second. So although Braithwaite is the new British champion, the focus is on Christie's fitness for the World Championships.
It's 3 weeks away, and to have an injury that's been niggling, and just doesn't seem to be going away. I mean, I've seen everybody, and, I'm getting a little bit worried.
And there's also concern about 110 metres hurdles world champion Colin Jackson, who withdrew from today's championships with a muscle injury. Australian golfer Wayne Riley won his first tournament in 4 years by clinching the Scottish Open title at Carnoustie this afternoon. He finished at 12 under par, 2 ahead of Nick Faldo. After an uncertain start, Faldo put together a string of birdies to whittle away at Riley's overnight 5-shot lead. But the 32-year-old Australian maintained his consistency, and a 20-foot birdie putt at the 17th effectively ensured his victory. Damon Hill's Williams-Renault will start in pole position for tomorrow's British Grand Prix at Silverstone after setting the fastest time in qualifying, not today, but yesterday. Rain affected this afternoon's final practice session, which meant that none of the other leading drivers could improve on the best time set by Hill 24 hours before. The World Championship leader Michael Schumacher will start second on the grid in his Benetton Renault, despite spinning off this afternoon. Spain's Miguel Indurain remains on course for a record 5th consecutive victory in the Tour de France. That's despite a win in today's 13th stage by the Ukrainian Sergei Uchakov, who just beat the American Lance Armstrong in a sprint finish. Indurain, though, retains the leader's yellow jersey. But British veteran Sean Yates has taken part in his last Tour de France. He retired today with tendinitis and won't return. Martin.
The main news again. A plan for the defence of UN safe areas in Bosnia is to be considered by British, French and American military chiefs tomorrow. And that's the BBC News tonight. Good night.
This year, 75,000 people will suffer from an illness that is rarely talked about. Whether their symptoms are mild or acute, sufferers often pass unacknowledged by their doctors. New evidence suggests their plight can affect their own children, and yet the burden of this disease continues to be borne in silence. For 1 in 10 women, the dream of motherhood turns into the nightmare of postnatal depression. Panorama reports on the baby blues, Monday, 9:30, BBC One.
Good evening. Lots of showery weather around today and more to come for tomorrow. But today the majority of the showers were in the north. Tomorrow I think we're more likely to find them in the south. The radar's still showing quite a crop of heavy showers, maybe some thunderstorms too, rolling in towards the northwest of Wales and northwest England and moving into the east of Scotland as well. These ones in the far southeast are rapidly fizzling away. It's where we have the weather fronts that the main regions of showers gather together, and for tomorrow we're more likely to see that, I think, across the south. Right now, most of the showers, as I say, are already beginning to fade away. They'll die down overnight with clear skies in the east, rather cloudy still in Scotland, and still a scattering of showers around these western and some southern coasts. So this is how Sunday is going to start. A little early morning mistiness maybe in some parts of the east, but a lot of bright weather. Those showers will soon get going over central and southern areas of England and Wales, turning heavy and even thundery into the afternoon and evening. Northern parts of England, Scotland and Northern Ireland, just a light scattering of lightish showers, with thicker cloud bringing more persistent rain in across Northern Ireland later in the afternoon and into the evening, and perhaps some of that moving into southern Scotland late in the day. The warmest weather in eastern districts, warmest of all across eastern England, up to 23 Celsius. That's how it looks. Good night.